The morning mist hung over forward operating base Kestrel like a shroud, but it wasn't thick enough to hide what shouldn't have been there. Staff Sergeant Mikhail Volkov lowered his binoculars, his weathered face creased with confusion. The satellite dish on Hill 847 had been destroyed 3 days ago. He'd watched the Hellfire missile turn it into twisted metal and smoke. Yet there it stood, pristine and operational, its white surface gleaming against the Afghan mountainside like a middle finger raised at everything they thought they knew about this war. "Control, this is Overwatch 7, Volkov whispered into his radio, never taking his eyes off the impossible sight. "I've got eyes on Hill 847. The target is intact. Repeat, target appears intact and functional." The static crackled for what felt like an eternity before Captain Reed's voice cut through. "Say again, Overwatch 7. Satellite imagery confirms successful strike 72 hours ago." Volkov adjusted his scope, the crosshairs dancing over the dish that shouldn't exist. "Negative, control. Target is standing. Someone either rebuilt this thing overnight or we hit the wrong hill." His finger traced the serial number etched into the concrete base, the same number from their pre-strike briefing, the same number that had been photographed from a Reaper drone before Captain Raven Blackwood had put a precision-guided munition through its center. That was the thing about Captain Blackwood. When she pulled the trigger, things stayed dead. The woman had logged more combat hours than most pilots saw in entire deployments, flying everything from Predators to the experimental aircraft nobody talked about. Her service record read like a fever dream of classified missions and impossible shots. The kind of pilot who could thread a needle from 30,000 feet while dodging surface-to-air missiles. But 3 days ago, after she'd squeezed the trigger on what should have been a routine strike, something had changed. The brass had been whispering. Questions were being asked about her targeting systems, her mental state, her reliability. General Morrison had been particularly vocal, suggesting that perhaps Captain Blackwood's legendary precision was finally showing cracks. "Maybe she's lost her edge," Morrison had said during the morning briefing, his voice carrying just loud enough for the right ears. "These mountain ranges can play tricks on even experienced pilots. 4,000 meters is a hell of a long shot." Now, staring at the impossible satellite dish, Volkov wondered if they'd all missed something. In special operations, when the impossible happened, it usually meant someone was 3 moves ahead of you. And in Afghanistan, being behind meant people died. The wind shifted, carrying with it the distant sound of rotor blades. Someone was coming to explain this mess. Volkov just hoped they brought answers instead of more questions. The mountain air tasted of secrets and gunpowder, and Staff Sergeant Volkov had learned long ago that in this business, the two were often the same thing. He keyed his radio again, his voice steady despite the ice forming in his gut. "Control, recommend immediate reconnaissance of Hill 847. Something's not right here." The static that answered him seemed to echo with the weight of everything they didn't understand about this war, this enemy, and the woman who'd supposedly missed an impossible shot. 3,000 miles away, in a climate-controlled trailer at Creech Air Force Base, Captain Raven Blackwood sat before a bank of monitors that painted the Afghan landscape in shades of green and amber. Her colleagues called it mowing the lawn, hunting targets from half a world away while sipping coffee that had gone cold hours ago. But Raven had never seen it that way. Every pixel on her screen represented lives, choices, consequences that rippled across continents. Her hands moved across the controls with the fluid precision of a concert pianist, adjusting camera angles and sensor arrays as reports filtered in from forward operating base Kestrel. The satellite dish on Hill 847 was intact. Impossible, but intact. The same dish she'd watched disintegrate under the impact of her Hellfire missile 72 hours, 14 minutes, and 37 seconds ago. Major Patricia Santos appeared beside her workstation, coffee cup in hand and concern etched across her features. "Walk me through the strike again, Blackwood." Raven's fingers paused over the keyboard. She'd been expecting this conversation since the first confused reports started trickling in. Target acquired at 3:47 hours. Weather was clear, wind negligible. Laser designation solid throughout the entire flight path. Impact confirmed by both drone imagery and ground assets. Ground assets that now report the target standing. Yes, ma'am. Santos pulled up a chair, settling in with the deliberate movements of someone preparing for a long conversation. In the Air Force, when impossible things happened, they usually traced back to human error, equipment failure, or enemy countermeasures. Sometimes all three. Your targeting system logs show a successful strike. Telemetry data confirms missile impact. But somehow, we're staring at an intact satellite dish. Raven's call sign had been earned over the mountains of Afghanistan 3 years earlier, during a mission that had gone sideways in spectacular fashion. A Taliban mortar team had pinned down a Marine patrol in a valley that most pilots couldn't even find on a map, let alone engage effectively. But ravens were different from other birds. They saw everything, remembered everything, and when they struck with purpose. That day, she put 6 Hellfire missiles through windows the size of dinner plates, each shot threaded between power lines and around rocky outcroppings that should have made precision strikes impossible. The Marines had walked away. The mortar team hadn't. And when the after-action reports were filed, someone had noted that ravens in mythology were messengers between the living and the dead. Could be enemy deception, Raven offered, though her voice carried no conviction. Decoy equipment misdirection. Santos shook her head. Serial numbers match. Concrete foundation shows no signs of recent construction. Either we're dealing with some very sophisticated enemy engineering, or she let the sentence hang in the air like smoke from a spent cartridge. The unspoken possibility settled between them like a challenge. Equipment failure was embarrassing but survivable. Human error was a black mark but manageable. But systematic breakdown of multiple verification systems, that suggested something far worse, the kind of problem that ended careers and started investigations. Through the trailer's tinted windows, the Nevada desert stretched toward mountains that reminded Raven of Afghanistan's peaks. Same sun, same endless horizons, same weight of responsibility that came with holding life and death in your fingertips. But here, surrounded by air conditioning and ergonomic chairs, death arrived in pixels and data streams rather than screams and blood. Her phone buzzed with a text from her daughter. "Mom, can you call tonight? Big test tomorrow." 16 years old and still believing her mother worked a desk job that required odd hours and frequent travel. The lie had become easier over the years, but moments like this made it taste like copper pennies. "I need to review the footage again," Raven said, already pulling up the strike video, frame by frame. Major Santos stood, her coffee cup empty and her expression unreadable. "Do it. And Raven, find me an explanation that makes sense. Because right now this looks like either equipment failure or," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "or something we haven't seen before." The implication hung in the recycled air of the trailer. In modern warfare, new enemy capabilities weren't just tactical problems, they were existential threats. If someone had developed countermeasures against precision-guided munitions, everything about how America fought wars would need to be reconsidered. Raven queued up the strike footage, her eyes tracking the missile's flight path across familiar terrain. Somewhere in these pixels lay the answer to an impossible question. She just hoped she could find it before someone decided she was the problem. General Morrison's office at the Pentagon smelled like leather and disappointment, a combination that had become increasingly familiar to anyone briefing him on the Afghanistan situation. He stood before a wall-mounted display showing satellite imagery of Hill 847, his jaw working like he was chewing through a particularly tough piece of meat. "So let me understand this correctly," he said, his voice carrying the kind of barely controlled irritation that made junior officers check their shoelaces. "We have a pilot who claims to have destroyed a target, multiple verification systems that confirm the strike, and a target that is somehow still operational. He turned to face the assembled staff officers, his gray eyes scanning faces like a targeting system, acquiring threats. Someone explained to me how this is possible. Colonel James Hartford, Morrison's intelligence chief, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Sir, we're exploring several possibilities. Equipment malfunction, enemy countermeasures, possible reconstruction. In 3 days, Morrison's voice cut through the explanation like a blade. They rebuilt a sophisticated communications array in 3 days, in the middle of nowhere, without us noticing. The silence that followed was the kind that preceded bad decisions and scapegoating. In the Pentagon's sterile conference rooms, careers were made and destroyed with the same clinical precision that characterized modern warfare. And right now, someone needed to be held responsible for an impossible situation. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Webb, Morrison's aide, cleared her throat delicately. Sir, there's also the possibility of pilot error. Captain Blackwood has been under significant stress lately. Divorce proceedings, custody issues, extended deployment rotations. Morrison's attention sharpened like a predator sensing weakness. Raven Blackwood had been a thorn in his side for 3 years, ever since she'd questioned his targeting priorities during a Joint Chiefs briefing. Publicly, with data to back up her concerns. The kind of insubordination that couldn't be punished directly but could be remembered, filed away for future consideration. Captain Blackwood, he mused, the name rolling off his tongue like an accusation. The same Captain Blackwood who thinks she knows better than seasoned ground commanders how to prosecute targets. Her success rate is exceptional, sir, Colonel Hartford offered weakly. 96% accuracy over 4 years of combat operations. Statistics, Morrison waved dismissively. What matters is reliability, consistency, following orders without freelancing. He moved to the window, staring out at the Potomac River where it curved around the Pentagon like a moat protecting military bureaucracy from civilian oversight. I've been saying for months that these remote pilots lose perspective. No skin in the game, no real consequences for their actions. The assembled officers exchanged glances. Morrison's views on drone warfare were well known and controversial. He belonged to the old school that believed war should be fought by people who could smell the gunpowder and feel the ground shake under artillery strikes. Remote warfare, in his opinion, turned killing into a video game played by people who went home to suburban dinners and little league games. Her psychological evaluations are current and satisfactory, Webb added, though her voice lacked conviction. Morrison turned back to the room, his decision crystallizing behind pale eyes that had seen too many wars and buried too many mistakes. Schedule a review board. Full investigation of Captain Blackwood's actions, equipment, and mental fitness for duty. He paused, letting the implications settle. And I want alternative targeting solutions for any future strikes in that sector. The meeting dissolved with the efficient brutality of military decision-making. Papers were gathered, orders were issued, and somewhere in Nevada, a woman who had spent 4 years threading needles from 30,000 feet was about to discover that precision meant nothing if you couldn't hit the right target. But Morrison didn't know about the footage Raven had discovered during her frame-by-frame analysis. Didn't know about the thermal anomaly that appeared exactly 17 seconds before missile impact. Didn't know that someone had been watching the watchers, and that Hill 847 had become the opening move in a game whose rules nobody understood yet. The afternoon sun slanted through the trailer windows at Creech Air Force Base, casting long shadows across workstations where America's remote pilots fought wars with joysticks and determination. Captain Raven Blackwood had been staring at the same sequence of footage for 6 hours, her eyes burning from the strain of parsing pixels for truth. Frame 1247 was where everything changed. A thermal bloom appeared on the hillside, barely visible against the background heat signature of sun-warmed rock. But there, a flash of infrared that lasted exactly 2.3 seconds before vanishing like it had never existed. Computer enhanced thermal layer, time index 14, 23, 17, she commanded, her voice hoarse from hours of analysis. The image sharpened, revealing what looked like a human figure moving behind the satellite dish. Not Afghan insurgents. Their heat signatures were distinctive, shaped by diet and clothing and the way they moved through familiar terrain. This was someone else. Someone who knew they were being watched and had taken measures to minimize their thermal footprint. Major Santos appeared at her shoulder like a ghost. Find something. Maybe. Raven highlighted the anomaly, watching as the computer attempted to resolve the blurred pixels into something recognizable. Someone was on that hill during the strike, someone who shouldn't have been there. Forward observer. Negative. Fob Kestrel confirmed no friendly assets in the target area. Raven's fingers danced across the controls, pulling up communications intercepts from the time of the strike. And look at this. Encrypted burst transmission from the target area, exactly 30 seconds before missile impact. The implications hit both women simultaneously. Someone had been watching their targeting system, had known the missile was coming, and had transmitted that information to someone. The satellite dish Raven had thought she'd destroyed might have been the least important part of whatever was happening on Hill 847. This needs to go up the chain, Santos said, but her voice carried uncertainty. In the military, bringing problems upstairs was often confused with creating problems. And right now, with General Morrison's review board looming, additional complications might be seen as excuse-making rather than intelligence gathering. Raven's secure phone rang with the distinctive tone that meant family. She glanced at the caller ID, Emma, her daughter, and felt the familiar twist in her stomach that came with trying to balance two lives that couldn't quite fit together. "Mom," Emma's voice carried the particular strain of 16-year-old anxiety. "I know you're working, but I really need to talk to you about tomorrow." "Hey, sweetheart, what's tomorrow?" Raven kept her voice light despite the weight of surveillance footage and impossible targets and career-ending review boards pressing down on her shoulders. "My college interview, remember, for the engineering program. You said you'd help me practice." The memory hit like shrapnel. 3 weeks ago, during a rare moment of normalcy, she'd promised to help Emma prepare for the interview that could determine her daughter's future. But 3 weeks ago, satellite dishes stayed destroyed when you destroyed them, and generals didn't convene boards to question your competence. "Of course, Em, what time?" 7:30. "But Mom, if you can't make it because of work." Emma's voice carried understanding beyond her years, the kind that came from growing up with a parent whose job required lies wrapped in national security classifications. "I'll be there," Raven said, though she wasn't sure how. The investigation was accelerating, and missing a family commitment during a competency review would be noted, filed, and used against her when the time came. After hanging up, she found Major Santos studying the thermal imagery with the intensity of someone solving a puzzle whose solution might prevent a war. "Raven, what if the satellite dish was never the real target?" "Explain." "What if someone wanted us to think we'd destroyed it? What if the whole point was to make us believe we'd succeeded while they—" Santos paused, working through possibilities. "While they what? What would be worth this level of deception?" Through the trailer's windows, the Nevada desert stretched toward mountains that held secrets in their shadows. Somewhere out there, in training facilities that didn't officially exist, military contractors were developing technologies that blurred the line between science fiction and tactical reality. Holographic projections, advanced camouflage systems, electronic warfare capabilities that could make missiles see things that weren't there. "Computer, cross-reference all signals intelligence from Grid Square 847 for the past 7 days," Raven commanded. If someone was playing games with American targeting systems, They'd left electronic fingerprints somewhere in the data stream. The results painted a picture that made her blood run cold. 17 separate electronic signatures had been detected in the target area over the past week, frequencies that matched known Russian electronic warfare systems, Chinese satellite communication protocols, and several unidentified emissions that didn't correspond to anything in the threat database. Hill 847 hadn't been a target, it had been bait, and she'd taken it. The secure phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Captain Blackwood, some birds see more than others. Check your personal email. A friend who appreciates precision. Major Santos watched the color drain from Raven's face. What is it? I think, Raven said, her voice barely above a whisper, we're not just being watched. I think we're being recruited. The email arrived in her personal account 37 minutes later, sent from an address that traced back to a server farm that didn't exist on any official records. No signature, no identification, just coordinates and a timestamp that corresponded exactly to the moment her Hellfire missile had impacted Hill 847. But more unsettling than the message itself was what it contained: footage of her own strike, shot from a ground-level perspective that should have been impossible. Someone had been close enough to her target to record the missile's impact, close enough to film the explosion that she'd thought had destroyed a satellite dish, close enough to prove that what she'd hit wasn't what she'd thought she was hitting. The footage showed her Hellfire missile striking not the operational satellite dish, but an elaborate decoy constructed from plywood and metallic paint. The real dish, barely visible in the corner of the frame, remained untouched and functional throughout the entire engagement. Which meant that for 3 days, while General Morrison questioned her competence and her superiors wondered about equipment failures, the enemy had been listening to every communication, tracking every movement, watching every decision made by Forward Operating Base Kestrel. Her phone rang again. Major Santos. Raven, we've got a problem. Satellites are picking up movement around multiple sites in your operational area. Someone's been using our targeting data to position assets. Santos's voice carried the weight of realization. Every strike you've made in the past month, they've been watching, learning, preparing. How many sites? 14 confirmed, possibly more. All of them showing the same pattern: decoy equipment and hidden observation posts. Santos paused. Raven, they've been using our own precision against us. Every successful strike was actually intelligence gathering for whoever's running this operation. Through her trailer window, the Nevada desert looked suddenly hostile, as if the familiar landscape had revealed itself to be something else entirely. In modern warfare, information was more valuable than territory, and someone had been collecting American tactical intelligence with the efficiency of a scientific experiment. What about the review board? Raven asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Still scheduled. In fact, given what we're discovering, Morrison's people are likely to argue that you should have detected the deception, that an experienced pilot should have recognized the signs. The irony was suffocating. She'd been set up to fail by an enemy sophisticated enough to manipulate American targeting systems, but her own command structure was more interested in finding someone to blame than understanding how they'd been outmaneuvered. "Ma'am," Raven said, her voice carrying the weight of 4 years' worth of precision strikes and impossible shots, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." "Go ahead. Do you think I missed that shot?" The pause stretched long enough for satellites to complete their orbits and missiles to find their targets. When Santos finally spoke, her voice carried conviction born from watching Raven thread needles from stratospheric altitudes. "No, I think someone wanted us to believe you missed. The question is why." That night, Raven sat in her Nevada apartment, staring at her daughter's college application materials spread across a dining room table that had hosted more military briefings than family dinners. Emma's engineering portfolio showcased projects that combined artistic vision with mathematical precision, bridge designs that looked like sculptures, computer algorithms that generated poetry, robotics projects that blurred the line between technology and art. Her daughter's work reminded her why precision mattered, why the difference between hitting your target and missing could mean the difference between protection and destruction. But looking at Hill 847's impossible satellite dish, Raven was beginning to understand that sometimes precision was a weapon that could be turned against you. The anonymous email had contained more than just footage. Hidden in the metadata was a phone number and a message. Tomorrow, 2200 hours, questions will be answered. Outside her window, the lights of Las Vegas painted the desert in artificial colors, a reminder that in Nevada, illusion and reality had been dance partners for decades. Somewhere in those lights, tourists were losing money to games designed to separate them from their cash, convinced they understood odds that had been mathematically stacked against them from the beginning. Raven wondered if she'd been playing a similar game without realizing it, striking targets in a war whose rules had been written by someone else entirely. Her secure phone buzzed with a message from Emma. "Thanks for tonight, Mom. The interview prep helped a lot. Love you." The timestamp showed 2147 hours. Somehow, in the middle of discovering that her entire operational reality had been compromised, she'd managed to spend 3 hours helping her daughter prepare for a future that might not include military service, precision targeting, or classified operations that required lies wrapped in national security. At 2200 hours exactly, her personal phone rang. The number matched the one from the email. Captain Blackwood. The voice was calm, professional, unaccented in a way that suggested deliberate neutralization of identifying characteristics. "I believe you have questions about Hill 847. Who is this?" Someone who appreciates precision. Someone who believes you deserve to understand what you've been drawn into. A pause. "Your daughter's college interview went well tonight. Engineering is an excellent choice for someone with her talents." Ice formed in Raven's veins. They'd been watching her family. "If you threaten my daughter." "Captain, threats are unnecessary. We're on the same side, whether you realize it yet or not." The voice carried patient authority. "The satellite dish you thought you destroyed 3 days ago is now being used to coordinate attacks against American forces. Your precision created the perfect cover for its continued operation." Explain. "Someone has been manipulating your targeting data, using your reputation for accuracy to create believable destruction scenarios. Every target you've successfully engaged in the past 6 months has been replaced with decoys, while the real equipment was relocated and repurposed." The implications spread through her consciousness like shockwaves. 14 sites, Santos had said. 14 successful strikes that had actually been failures disguised as successes. 14 opportunities for the enemy to gather intelligence on American targeting procedures, response times, surveillance capabilities. "What do you want?" "What we want, Captain, is for you to continue being precise. But this time, we need your precision aimed at the right targets." The line went dead, leaving Raven alone with the weight of understanding that her greatest strength had been turned into a weapon against everything she'd sworn to protect. Outside her window, Las Vegas continued its eternal performance of light and distraction, while somewhere in the Nevada desert, training facilities prepared warriors for conflicts that hadn't been officially acknowledged yet. Tomorrow, she would face General Morrison's review board with knowledge that couldn't be shared and evidence that implicated her in failures she'd never intended. But tonight, she had 13 hours to decide whether precision meant following orders or protecting the people those orders were supposed to defend. Her phone buzzed with another text from Emma. "Mom, I think I want to study aerospace engineering. Maybe work on satellite systems someday." The irony was sharp enough to cut. Her daughter wanted to build the systems Raven had spent 4 years learning to destroy, while somewhere in Afghanistan, her precision was being used to orchestrate attacks against the people she joined the military to protect. At precisely 22:03 hours, Raven began planning her next shot. This one would have to count. Dawn came to forward operating base Kestrel like revelation, burning through the mountain mist to expose terrain that looked exactly the same as it had for centuries, but somehow felt fundamentally different. Staff Sergeant Mikhail Volkov had been watching Hill 847 through his scope for 6 hours, documenting a level of activity that made his teeth ache. The impossible satellite dish remained exactly where it shouldn't be, but now it was surrounded by equipment that definitely hadn't been there during his last observation. Antenna arrays, power generation units, what looked like a mobile command center disguised as construction debris. Someone had turned Hill 847 into a fully operational intelligence collection site while maintaining the illusion of abandonment. Control, Overwatch 7. I count at least 15 personnel on Hill 847. Repeat, 15 hostiles operating sophisticated electronic equipment around the target site. Captain Reed's response carried the strain of a man trying to reconcile impossible intelligence reports. Copy, Overwatch 7. Can you identify equipment types? Volkov adjusted his scope, studying arrays that looked more advanced than anything he'd seen in 4 deployments. Negative identification, but this isn't Taliban gear. This is state-sponsored equipment. Professional installation, military-grade camouflage. He paused, tracking movement between the antenna arrays. Control, these people know we're watching. They're operating in full view because they want us to see them. 3,000 miles away, the review board convened in a Pentagon conference room that smelled like coffee and career anxiety. General Morrison took his seat with the deliberate movements of a man preparing to solve a problem through application of military discipline. Captain Raven Blackwood entered the room wearing dress blues that had been pressed to razor sharpness, her ribbons and decorations arranged with the precision that characterized everything about her approach to military service. Behind her, Major Santos carried files that contained evidence Morrison wasn't prepared to understand. Captain Blackwood, Morrison began, his voice carrying formal authority wrapped around personal satisfaction. You stand accused of failing to properly engage targets in your assigned operational area, resulting in continued enemy capability and potential threat to American forces. Sir, I request permission to present evidence relevant to my targeting procedures. Raven's voice carried no emotion, but her eyes held the steady focus that had made her legendary among drone pilots. Colonel Hartford shifted uncomfortably. The board will hear evidence, but the facts are clear. Target was engaged. Target remains operational. The question is whether this represents equipment failure, procedural error, or Morrison's prompt carried predatory anticipation, or degraded pilot performance due to personal stress factors. The words hung in the climate-controlled air like an accusation. In the military's bureaucratic machinery, personal problems were often blamed for professional failures, especially when the alternative was acknowledging systematic vulnerabilities that might require expensive solutions. Major Santos stood, her files arranged with the care of someone building a legal defense. Generals, I believe the evidence will show that Captain Blackwood's targeting was not only accurate but was deliberately manipulated by sophisticated enemy countermeasures. Morrison's expression shifted from satisfaction to irritation. Major, are you suggesting that enemy forces have developed capabilities to interfere with American precision guidance systems? Sir, I'm suggesting that someone has been using our own precision against us. The conference room fell silent except for the whisper of air conditioning and the distant hum of Pentagon bureaucracy. On the wall-mounted display, satellite imagery showed Hill 847 in high resolution, the impossible satellite dish clearly visible and apparently functional. "Explain," Morrison commanded. Santos activated her presentation, and the room filled with thermal imagery that painted a picture of deception sophisticated enough to fool multiple verification systems. At time index 14, 23, 17, thermal sensors detected human presence at the target site. Encrypted communications were intercepted 30 seconds before missile impact. Post-strike analysis reveals that Captain Blackwood's Hellfire missile struck an elaborate decoy, while the actual target remained operational. Decoy. Colonel Hartford leaned forward, his intelligence background making him naturally suspicious of convenient explanations. Plywood construction, metallic paint, heat sources designed to mimic operational equipment signatures. Santos pulled up the anonymous footage, though she couldn't reveal its source without compromising operational security. Ground-level imagery confirms that the missile impact occurred exactly where intended, but the target was not what our surveillance indicated. Morrison studied the evidence with the expression of a man watching his certainties dissolve. "You're telling me that enemy forces constructed an elaborate deception, predicted our targeting procedures, and successfully convinced our surveillance systems that they were operating equipment they had actually moved?" "Sir, that's exactly what I'm telling you. And Hill 847 is just one of 14 sites showing similar patterns." The implications spread through the room like contamination. If enemy forces could manipulate American targeting intelligence, then every precision strike became suspect, every successful engagement potentially compromised. The technological superiority that formed the backbone of American military doctrine suddenly looked vulnerable in ways nobody had anticipated. "Who has these capabilities?" Morrison asked, though his voice suggested he suspected he wouldn't like the answer. "We're still analyzing signatures and methodologies, but the sophistication suggests state-level resources. Russia, China, possibly Iran with external support." Through the Pentagon's bulletproof windows, the Potomac River continued its ancient flow toward Chesapeake Bay, carrying secrets toward the Atlantic just as it had during every American war since the building's construction. But this war was different, fought with electrons and deception rather than bullets and explosions, where victory went to whoever could better manipulate information rather than whoever could apply superior firepower. Morrison turned his attention back to Captain Blackwood, who had maintained perfect military bearing throughout the briefing despite watching her competence questioned and her judgment dissected. "Captain, in light of this evidence, how do you explain your failure to detect these countermeasures?" "Sir, with respect, I didn't fail to detect them. I detected exactly what they wanted me to detect." Raven's response carried the confidence of someone who had spent 4 years learning to see through deception at 30,000 feet. The real failure was assuming that precision guidance systems are immune to sophisticated countermeasures. The review board adjourned with more questions than answers, leaving Morrison to contemplate a future where American technological advantages might be neutralized by enemies clever enough to turn those advantages into weapons. Outside the Pentagon, traffic flowed with civilian certainty that their military remained uncompromised, unaware that precision itself had become a vulnerability. But in Nevada, Captain Blackwood was preparing for a different kind of precision, one that required understanding not just where to aim, but who was aiming back. The call came at 1847 hours, 37 minutes after Raven had returned to her trailer at Creech Air Force Base. Major Santos's voice carried urgency that made ice form in Raven's stomach. "Emergency briefing, Conference Room Charlie, now." The room was already crowded when Raven arrived, filled with faces that represented the intersection of intelligence gathering and precision warfare. Colonel Hartford stood at the head of a conference table covered with satellite imagery, signals intercepts, and tactical assessments that painted a picture of systematic compromise. "Ladies and gentlemen," Hartford began, his voice carrying the weight of discoveries that changed everything. "We have a problem that goes far beyond Hill 847. The main display showed a map of Afghanistan marked with red indicators that spread across the operational area like a rash. Each red dot represented a supposedly successful strike that had been revealed as elaborate deception, locations where American precision had been turned into enemy intelligence gathering. 19 confirmed sites, 12 more under investigation. Every successful engagement by our precision assets in Sector 7 has been compromised. Hartford's laser pointer traced connections between the sites, revealing a pattern that suggested coordination at levels no one had anticipated. Someone has been running a systematic intelligence operation using our own targeting data. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Webb, recently promoted to Intelligence Directorate, stood to present her analysis. Signals intelligence indicates a coordinated network using our strike data to map response times, surveillance patterns, and tactical procedures. They're not just gathering intelligence, they're building a complete picture of how America fights wars. The implications settled over the room like fallout. Modern American military doctrine relied on precision strikes to achieve tactical objectives with minimal collateral damage. But if enemies could manipulate targeting intelligence, that precision became a liability rather than an asset. "How long has this been operational?" someone asked from the back of the room. "Minimum 6 months, possibly longer. The sophistication suggests years of development and preparation." Webb pulled up communications intercepts that showed encrypted transmissions coordinated across multiple sites. Whoever's running this operation has been patient, methodical, and extremely well-funded. Raven studied the display, her trained eye picking out patterns that spoke to a level of planning she'd rarely encountered. "They're not just watching us, they're teaching themselves to fight us." "Explain, Captain." "Look at the site placement. Each location provides overlapping surveillance of our flight paths, communication patterns, logistical movements. They're building a three-dimensional model of how we operate in theater." Raven moved to the display, her finger tracing vectors that revealed tactical intelligence she'd accumulated through 4 years of precision targeting. "This isn't intelligence gathering. This is preparation for a specific type of engagement." The room fell silent as the implications crystallized. Someone was preparing to fight American precision warfare by turning that precision into predictable behavior patterns. Every successful strike had provided data about how American forces responded to specific tactical situations. Colonel Hartford's secure phone buzzed with a priority message that made his face go pale. "Fort Bragg is reporting similar patterns in Iraq. Maxwell is seeing compromise indicators in Syria." He looked up from his phone. "This isn't limited to Afghanistan, it's global." Major Santos leaned forward, her intelligence background making her naturally suspicious of patterns that seemed too comprehensive to be accidental. "Colonel, what if this isn't enemy intelligence gathering? What if someone's testing our responses for a specific reason? Such as preparing to neutralize our precision capabilities when they need us unable to respond effectively." The words hung in the air like smoke from a burned bridge. In the Pentagon's strategic planning documents, scenarios existed for conflicts where American technological superiority might be neutralized through electronic warfare, cyber attacks, or sophisticated countermeasures. But those were theoretical exercises designed to prepare for hypothetical futures. This was different. This was active preparation for a specific conflict by enemies who understood that defeating America required making American strengths into weaknesses. Raven's phone buzzed with a text from the anonymous number. "Conference room Charlie has excellent acoustics. We should meet." Ice formed in her veins as she realized that whoever was orchestrating the Hill 847 deception had access to information about classified briefings held in secure facilities. The compromise went deeper than targeting systems. It included penetration of command structures that were supposed to be impervious to foreign intelligence. "Colonel," Raven said, her voice cutting through technical discussions about countermeasures and defensive procedures, "I think we're being listened to right now." Hartford's hand moved instinctively toward his sidearm, a gesture that spoke to instincts honed through decades of warfare, where threats came with muzzle flashes and incoming artillery. But this threat was invisible, transmitted through electromagnetic spectrums that turned secure facilities into broadcasting stations for anyone with sophisticated enough receivers. "Explain, Captain." Raven held up her phone, displaying the text message that had arrived during the briefing. The timestamp showed reception at exactly 19:23 hours, 3 minutes after Colonel Hartford had begun discussing global compromise patterns. The conference room erupted in controlled chaos as security protocols activated and electronic countermeasures engaged. Within minutes, the room was sealed and swept for listening devices. Communication jammers were activated, and additional security personnel established a perimeter that turned Conference Room Charlie into an electronic fortress. But Raven knew it was too late. Whoever was orchestrating this operation had already demonstrated capabilities that made traditional security measures irrelevant. They weren't just gathering intelligence. They were flaunting their ability to penetrate American command structures whenever they chose. Her phone buzzed again, the message arriving despite active jamming. "Security theater is amusing but unnecessary. We're not your enemies, Captain Blackwood. We're trying to prevent you from fighting the wrong war." Colonel Hartford read the message over her shoulder, his face cycling through expressions that ranged from professional concern to personal outrage. "Captain, I'm ordering you to respond. Find out what they want." Raven's fingers hesitated over the keyboard. In her 4 years of precision targeting, she'd learned to distinguish between tactical decisions and strategic traps. Engaging with unknown contacts during active intelligence operations could compromise everything from operational security to personal safety. But the alternative was continuing to fight a war where every successful strike provided intelligence to enemies sophisticated enough to manipulate American precision from continents away. She typed, "Who are you?" The response arrived instantly. "People who understand that precision without context is just expensive destruction. Meet us tomorrow, 800 hours, coordinates to follow. Come alone, come armed, come prepared to learn who's been playing chess while you've been playing checkers." Through the conference room's bulletproof windows, the Nevada desert stretched toward mountains that held secrets in facilities that officially didn't exist. Somewhere in those mountains, military contractors developed technologies that blurred lines between reality and electronic warfare, creating weapons that fought with information rather than explosives. Major Santos studied the communications intercepts with the intensity of someone solving a puzzle whose solution might prevent global conflict. "Raven, what if the Hill 847 deception wasn't designed to gather intelligence about our targeting procedures? What if it was designed to get your attention specifically?" "My attention." Think about it. 19 sites compromised, but only your targeting areas generated anomalies obvious enough to trigger investigation. They could have maintained perfect deception indefinitely, but they chose to reveal themselves to the one pilot with enough experience to recognize systematic manipulation. The implication hit Raven like shockwaves from a precision strike. Someone had orchestrated an elaborate intelligence operation not to gather information, but to make contact with a specific American pilot whose reputation for precision made her valuable for purposes that hadn't been revealed yet. "They're recruiting me," she said, the words carrying certainty that made everyone in the room reassess their understanding of the threat they were facing. Colonel Hartford activated his secure communication system, establishing connections to Pentagon intelligence directorates and NSA analysis centers. Ladies and gentlemen, we're no longer dealing with enemy intelligence gathering. We're dealing with an active recruitment operation targeting specific American military personnel. The overnight hours passed like a precision-guided countdown, each minute bringing Captain Raven Blackwood closer to a rendezvous that could end her career or reveal intelligence that might prevent a war. She sat in her Nevada apartment, surrounded by her daughter's college application materials and military commendations that represented 4 years of threading needles from stratospheric altitudes. At 3:47 hours, her secure phone rang with a call from Emma. "Mom, I know it's early, but I couldn't sleep. The college interview went amazingly. They said my engineering portfolio showed exactly the kind of innovative thinking they're looking for." Emma's voice carried excitement that made Raven's chest tight with pride and terror in equal measure. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Tell me about it." I showed them my bridge design project, the one that uses tensioned cables to create artistic patterns while maintaining structural integrity. They said it demonstrated understanding that engineering isn't just about function. It's about creating systems that serve multiple purposes simultaneously. The words hit Raven like revelation. Multiple purposes simultaneously. Everything about Hill 847 suddenly snapped into focus with crystalline clarity. The satellite dish hadn't been bait for intelligence gathering. It had been a recruitment tool, a demonstration of capabilities, and a testing mechanism all wrapped into a single operation. "Mom, are you okay? You sound weird." "I'm fine, Em. Just thinking about how proud I am of you." Raven forced normalcy into her voice despite the weight of understanding that her precision had been evaluated, tested, and approved by people whose capabilities made American technological superiority look fragile. After ending the call, she sat in darkness that felt pregnant with possibilities. At 800 hours, she would meet people who had demonstrated ability to manipulate American precision warfare from continents away. People who understood that modern conflicts were won through information manipulation rather than superior firepower. People who might represent the only path toward preventing her precision from being turned into a weapon against everything she'd sworn to protect. At 600 hours, she began preparing for a mission that wasn't officially sanctioned, wasn't tactically approved, and might represent either treason or the most important intelligence gathering opportunity of her career. Her sidearm felt heavier than usual as she holstered it, weighted with implications that went far beyond personal protection. The coordinates led to a location in the Nevada desert that looked exactly like every other patch of sand and scrub, but felt different in ways that made her trained pilot instincts scream warnings. No structures were visible, no vehicles, no obvious signs of human presence. But something about the electromagnetic environment felt wrong, as if the air itself carried signatures that didn't match natural background radiation. At exactly 800 hours, a figure emerged from what she'd thought was empty landscape. Tall, professionally dressed in civilian clothes that managed to suggest military bearing without obvious indicators. Male, probably 40s, carrying himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "Captain Blackwood, thank you for coming. You have 30 seconds to explain who you are before I call this in," Raven replied, her hand resting on her sidearm in a gesture that carried 4 years' worth of precision training. "We represent interests that align with American security but operate outside official channels." The man's voice carried no accent, no regional characteristics, nothing that would provide identifying information. "Your precision has been impressive, but it's been misdirected toward targets that serve enemy intelligence gathering rather than American tactical objectives." "Explain." Hill 847 was a test, not of your targeting capabilities, but of your ability to recognize systematic deception and respond appropriately. He gestured toward the empty landscape. Everything you've been shooting at for the past 6 months has been designed to make you predictable, to map American tactical responses, to prepare for conflicts where your precision becomes a liability rather than an asset. The desert wind carried sounds that seemed wrong, too regular, too coordinated, suggesting hidden activity beneath the appearance of emptiness. Raven's training made her acutely aware that she was surrounded by capabilities she couldn't see, but could sense through electromagnetic anomalies that painted an invisible picture of advanced technology. What do you want? We want your precision aimed at targets that matter, real targets, the people who have been manipulating your strikes for intelligence gathering. The man pulled out a tablet displaying satellite imagery that showed locations Raven had never seen in official briefings. 19 facilities across 4 countries, all coordinating intelligence operations designed to neutralize American precision warfare capabilities. The imagery revealed installations that looked more advanced than anything in her operational experience. Command centers buried in mountainsides, communication arrays that could coordinate global operations, electronic warfare systems capable of manipulating targeting data from thousands of miles away. These are the people who turned your precision into their intelligence-gathering tool, the man continued. They've been preparing for a conflict where American technological superiority is neutralized through systematic manipulation of the systems that make that superiority possible. Raven studied the satellite imagery, her trained eye recognizing tactical signatures that suggested preparation for operations far more sophisticated than anything she'd encountered in 4 years of combat deployments. Who are you people? People who understand that the next war won't be fought with conventional forces. It will be fought with information, deception, and precision turned against itself. The man's expression remained neutral, but his eyes carried intensity that spoke to personal investment in outcomes that went far beyond career advancement. We need someone with your capabilities to help prevent that war before it starts. The tablet displayed targeting coordinates, technical specifications, and tactical assessments that represented months of intelligence gathering. But more importantly, it showed strike opportunities against enemies who had been using her precision to prepare for conflicts that could reshape global power structures. Captain Blackwood, the man said, his voice carrying certainty that made the Nevada desert feel suddenly small, your next shot needs to count. Because if you miss, everything you've spent 4 years protecting becomes vulnerable to enemies who understand precision better than we do. The weight of decision settled on Raven's shoulders like the responsibility of holding life and death in her fingertips. Somewhere in the desert around them, technology hummed with readiness to support precision strikes that could prevent wars or start them, depending on where she chose to aim. Her phone buzzed with a message from Emma. "Mom, thank you for believing in me. I want to build systems that protect people just like you do." The irony was sharp enough to cut. Her daughter wanted to build protective systems while Raven had discovered that her own protective precision had been turned into a weapon against protection itself. But precision, she was beginning to understand, wasn't just about hitting targets, it was about choosing the right ones. At 8:47 hours, Captain Raven Blackwood made a decision that would either save American precision warfare or destroy her career. Possibly both. The flight back to Creech Air Force Base took 47 minutes, but felt like crossing between different universes. Raven's hands moved through familiar pre-flight checks, while her mind processed intelligence that transformed everything she thought she knew about the war she'd been fighting. 19 facilities across 4 countries, all coordinating operations designed to neutralize American precision capabilities. But more unsettling than the scope of enemy operations was the realization that someone else had been tracking those operations with resources that rivaled anything in the official intelligence community. Major Santos was waiting in the parking lot when Raven landed, her expression carrying the particular strain of someone trying to manage multiple crises simultaneously. "We need to talk, now." The drive to Santos's quarters took 12 minutes through Nevada landscape that looked exactly the same as always but felt fundamentally different. When you discovered that your perception of reality had been manipulated by sophisticated enemies, every familiar sight became suspect, every routine assumption potentially compromised. "The review board results came back," Santos said without preamble. "Morrison's recommending you for advanced psychological evaluation and temporary suspension from combat operations." The news hit Raven like flak from an unexpected direction. On what grounds? Failure to recognize targeting anomalies, possible degradation of tactical judgment, personal stress factors affecting operational performance. Santos's voice carried professional sympathy wrapped around bureaucratic inevitability. "The Hill 847 incident is being classified as pilot error pending further investigation." Through Santos's living room window, the Nevada desert stretched toward mountains that held facilities where contractors developed technologies that didn't officially exist. Somewhere in those facilities, people were preparing for conflicts that wouldn't be announced until they were already lost or won. "Patricia, I need to tell you something that's going to sound impossible." "Try me." Raven spread the tablet's imagery across Santos's coffee table, revealing installations that looked more advanced than anything in standard intelligence briefings. "These are the facilities that have been manipulating our targeting data. All 19 of them, plus associated command and control networks." Santos studied the images with the intensity of someone whose intelligence background made her naturally suspicious of convenient explanations. "Where did you get this?" "Someone who claims to represent interests aligned with American security, but operating outside official channels." "That's a fancy way of saying unknown contacts with questionable authorization," Santos replied, though her voice carried professional interest rather than dismissal. "Patricia, look at the technical specifications. These installations represent capabilities we didn't know existed. Electronic warfare systems that can manipulate targeting data from thousands of miles away, communication networks that can coordinate global operations, command facilities buried deep enough to survive direct nuclear strikes." The implications spread through Santos's understanding like shock waves from precision impacts. If enemies possessed capabilities sophisticated enough to systematically manipulate American targeting intelligence, then every assumption about technological superiority needed to be reconsidered. "Raven, even if this intelligence is accurate, meeting with unknown contacts during active investigation could end your career and potentially constitute treason. And if I don't, American precision warfare becomes a liability rather than an asset in any future conflict." Through the window, aircraft contrails painted temporary lines across Nevada skies, reminders that the space above America was constantly crossed by systems designed to project power toward distant targets. But power, Raven was learning, was only as effective as the intelligence that guided it. Her secure phone rang with Colonel Hartford's distinctive tone. "Captain Blackwood, report to operations immediately. We have developing situations that require your expertise." The operations center at Creech Air Force Base hummed with activity that suggested crisis management rather than routine targeting. Screens displayed real-time intelligence feeds from multiple theaters, communications intercepts that painted pictures of coordinated enemy activity, and threat assessments that indicated escalation beyond normal operational parameters. Colonel Hartford looked up from a display showing global communication patterns that resembled neural networks more than traditional military command structures. "Captain, we're tracking massive electronic warfare activity across 19 locations. Someone's coordinating operations that suggest preparation for large-scale conflict." Raven studied the displays, recognizing patterns that matched the intelligence she'd received during her desert rendezvous. Sir, those locations correspond to facilities involved in the targeting data manipulation. How could you possibly know that? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Admitting to unauthorized contact with unknown intelligence sources during active investigation would confirm Morrison's suspicions about her judgment and reliability. But withholding intelligence about enemy capabilities that threatened American forces could cost lives on scales that made personal consequences irrelevant. Sir, I believe I've been contacted by people with detailed intelligence about the enemy network that's been manipulating our precision targeting systems. Hartford's expression shifted through stages that ranged from professional concern to personal alarm. Captain, you're telling me that during active investigation of your targeting procedures, you've been approached by unknown contacts claiming to have intelligence about enemy operations. Yes, sir. And you didn't report this contact immediately. Sir, the contact occurred during a classified briefing, suggesting penetration of our secure communications. I judged that following standard reporting procedures might compromise operational security. The operations center fell silent except for electronic systems that continued tracking global threats regardless of human bureaucratic concerns. On the main display, enemy communication patterns showed coordination that suggested preparation for operations far more sophisticated than anything previously encountered. Lieutenant Colonel Webb approached with signals intelligence that made her face pale. Colonel, we're intercepting communications that suggest imminent large-scale electronic warfare operations targeting American precision guidance systems globally. Timeline. Hours, not days. The weight of decision settled over Hartford like responsibility for outcomes that could reshape global power structures. American military doctrine relied on precision strikes to achieve tactical objectives with minimal collateral damage. But if enemies could neutralize precision capabilities through electronic warfare, that doctrine became liability rather than asset. Captain Blackwood, Hartford said, his voice carrying authority wrapped around desperation, I need you to reestablish contact with your unknown sources. Find out what they know about enemy capabilities and what they're proposing to do about it. Through the operations center's bulletproof windows, Nevada desert stretched toward mountains that held secrets in facilities that didn't officially exist. But somewhere in that landscape, people with capabilities that rivaled official intelligence agencies were preparing for conflicts that would be won through information rather than firepower. Raven's phone buzzed with a message from the anonymous number. Time is accelerating, Captain. Your precision is needed now. The coordinates that followed led to a location that didn't appear on any official maps, but Raven suspected it appeared on maps that most people never saw. The second rendezvous took place in a facility that shouldn't have existed, buried beneath Nevada desert that looked empty but felt pregnant with hidden activity. Raven followed coordinates that led to what appeared to be a maintenance shed beside an abandoned highway, but the elevator inside descended far enough to suggest construction that rivaled anything at NORAD or Cheyenne Mountain. The man from her morning meeting was waiting in a control room that made the Pentagon's most advanced facilities look primitive by comparison. Screens displayed real-time intelligence feeds from global sources, communication intercepts that painted comprehensive pictures of enemy operations, and targeting systems that could coordinate precision strikes across multiple theaters simultaneously. Captain Blackwood, welcome to what your government doesn't officially acknowledge exists. The man gestured toward displays that showed enemy electronic warfare preparations in stunning detail. We've been tracking the network that manipulated your targeting data for 18 months. Today, they're preparing to go active. Raven studied displays that revealed the scope of enemy preparations. electronic warfare systems positioned to neutralize GPS satellites, communication jammers capable of disrupting precision guidance networks, cyber weapons designed to corrupt targeting algorithms at their source. What's their objective? To demonstrate that American precision warfare is vulnerable to sophisticated countermeasures. Once that demonstration is complete, every regional power with electronic warfare capabilities will understand that American technological superiority can be neutralized through proper preparation. The implications were staggering. American military strategy relied on precision strikes to project power while minimizing collateral damage and political complications. But if precision strikes could be systematically compromised, then American power projection became either impossible or indiscriminate. What do you want from me? We want you to use your precision to prevent that demonstration. The man activated a targeting display that showed installations Raven recognized from the morning's intelligence briefing. 19 facilities, coordinated strike package, simultaneous engagement to prevent global electronic warfare operations against American precision systems. The targeting data was more comprehensive than anything Raven had worked with during 4 years of combat operations. Each facility was mapped in three-dimensional detail, with technical specifications that revealed vulnerabilities most targeting officers would never have access to. "Who are you people?" she asked again, though part of her suspected she was beginning to understand. "People who believe American precision warfare is worth preserving, even when official channels become compromised by bureaucratic concerns and political considerations." The man's expression remained neutral, but his eyes carried intensity that spoke to personal investment in outcomes that transcended career advancement. "We represent interests that align with American security, but operate with resources that official agencies can't access." Through reinforced windows, Nevada desert looked peaceful and empty, giving no indication of the sophisticated facility buried beneath it. But Raven's trained instincts recognized the electromagnetic signatures of technology that didn't appear in any official specifications, systems that blurred lines between defensive intelligence gathering and offensive precision warfare. "This is a black site," she said, the words carrying certainty that made everything click into place. "This is a facility that exists to protect American interests when official facilities become compromised by foreign intelligence penetration." The man activated additional displays that showed global communication patterns, revealing penetration of American command structures that went far deeper than anyone had officially acknowledged. Your Hill 847 targeting wasn't just manipulated by enemy electronic warfare. It was monitored by foreign intelligence assets with access to Pentagon communication systems. The revelation hit Raven like shock waves from multiple precision impacts. Enemy capabilities weren't limited to battlefield deception. They included penetration of command structures that were supposed to be impervious to foreign intelligence gathering. "How long have you known?" 18 months of investigation, 6 months of confirmation, 3 weeks of preparation for active countermeasures. The targeting display showed strike coordinates that could neutralize enemy electronic warfare capabilities before they achieved operational status. "Captain, in approximately 6 hours, enemy forces will demonstrate that American precision warfare is vulnerable to systematic compromise, unless we act first." Raven studied the targeting package, her trained eye recognizing opportunities for precision strikes that could prevent global degradation of American military capabilities. But accepting those coordinates meant operating outside official channels, potentially committing acts of war that hadn't been authorized by any government she served. What about chain of command, official authorization, legal oversight? "Captain, when enemy penetration includes the Pentagon itself, official channels become intelligence gathering opportunities for foreign adversaries." The man's voice carried patient authority that spoke to experience with situations where legal procedures became tactical liabilities. Your precision is needed to prevent demonstrations that will encourage every regional power to develop countermeasures against American precision warfare. The weight of decision settled on Raven's shoulders like responsibility for preventing wars that could reshape global power structures. Her precision could neutralize enemy capabilities that threatened American technological superiority, but only by operating outside the official structures she'd sworn to obey. Her phone buzzed with a message from Emma. "Mom, got accepted to the aerospace engineering program. Going to build satellites that can't be hacked or jammed. Want to make the world safer." The irony was sharp enough to draw blood. Her daughter wanted to build unhackable systems, while Raven had discovered that the system she'd trusted with 4 years of precision strikes had been systematically compromised by enemies sophisticated enough to turn American strengths into weaknesses. "Captain," the man said, his voice carrying certainty that made the buried facility feel suddenly small, "your next 19 shots need to count. Because if you miss, precision warfare becomes a liability rather than an asset for every future American conflict." At 14:23 hours, Captain Raven Blackwood made a decision that would either prevent global degradation of American precision warfare or end her career in spectacular fashion. Quite possibly both. The preparation took 97 minutes and required coordination between systems that officially didn't exist and targeting procedures that weren't in any manual Raven had studied during 4 years of precision warfare training. The buried facility's capabilities rivaled anything at official installations, but operated with resources that suggested funding sources beyond congressional oversight. 19 targets across 4 countries, each representing critical nodes in the network that had been manipulating American targeting intelligence for systematic preparation against precision warfare capabilities. The coordination required for simultaneous strikes would have challenged entire military commands, but somehow the facility's systems made it feel like routine targeting practice. "Target Alpha through Sierra, coordinates confirmed and locked," reported the technician, who might have been Air Force or might have been civilian contractor or might have been something else entirely. In facilities that didn't officially exist, traditional identification procedures became less relevant than technical competence. Raven reviewed each targeting package with the thoroughness that had made her legendary among drone pilots. Electronic warfare installations buried in mountainsides, communication arrays capable of global coordination, command facilities hardened against conventional strikes. Each target represented capabilities that threatened American precision warfare in ways official intelligence assessments had missed or minimized. "Time to target, 37 minutes, announced someone whose voice she recognized, but whose face she hadn't seen clearly in the facility's deliberately dim lighting. Through reinforced windows, Nevada desert looked peaceful and ordinary, giving no indication that decisions were being made that could prevent or precipitate conflicts involving global superpowers. But Raven's trained instincts recognized the weight of moments that balance between prevention and escalation, between precision and catastrophe. Her secure phone rang with Major Santos's distinctive tone. "Raven, where are you? Morrison's people are asking questions, and Colonel Hartford needs you for developing situations." The weight of divided loyalties settled over Raven like flak from multiple directions. Official channels demanded accountability and oversight, but official channels had been compromised by foreign intelligence penetration, sophisticated enough to turn American strengths into tactical liabilities. "Patricia, I need you to trust me for the next 40 minutes. After that, either American precision warfare remains viable, or I'll be available for court-martial proceedings." "Raven, what are you?" "Patricia, in 40 minutes, either 19 enemy electronic warfare facilities go offline simultaneously, or global demonstrations begin that will encourage every regional power to develop countermeasures against American precision capabilities. The line went silent except for electronic interference that suggested someone was monitoring communications in ways that made secure protocols irrelevant. When Santos spoke again, her voice carried understanding wrapped around professional concern. Official authorization. Unofficial necessity. Another pause, longer this time, waited with implications that could end careers or prevent wars depending on outcomes that wouldn't be known for several hours. Raven, you know I have to report this conversation. I know, but Patricia, when you make that report, include this. In 18 months, someone's going to ask why American precision warfare became ineffective against regional powers with sophisticated electronic countermeasures. Today's strikes might provide answers that prevent that question from becoming relevant. The facility's targeting systems achieved lock-on confirmation for all 19 targets simultaneously, a technical achievement that would have been impossible using official systems, but seemed routine for technology that didn't officially exist. Each target showed green indicators that confirmed optimal strike conditions, minimal collateral damage potential, maximum degradation of enemy electronic warfare capabilities. Captain, the man from her desert meeting, appeared at her workstation. Final confirmation required. After these strikes, enemy capabilities to manipulate American precision targeting will be significantly degraded, but our own capabilities will be fully exposed to foreign intelligence analysis. The trade-off was stark. Prevent immediate threats to precision warfare at the cost of revealing capabilities that provided strategic advantages through secrecy. But strategic advantages meant nothing if precision warfare itself became ineffective against sophisticated countermeasures. Confirmed, Raven said, her voice carrying 4 years' worth of precision targeting training compressed into a single syllable. At 15:37 hours, 19 precision-guided munitions launched from platforms that didn't appear on any official inventory, following flight paths that avoided official surveillance systems, targeting installations that threatened American precision warfare capabilities through systematic intelligence manipulation. The strikes arrived within 2.3 seconds of each other, a coordination that suggested technical capabilities beyond anything in official military inventories. Each impact was precisely calibrated to neutralize electronic warfare equipment while minimizing collateral damage to surrounding infrastructure. But more importantly, each strike carried implications that would reshape global understanding of American precision warfare capabilities and the unofficial resources available to protect those capabilities when official channels became compromised. Raven watched the strike confirmations appear on displays that painted success in digital precision, but she knew the real test would come in the following hours and days as global intelligence agencies analyzed what had happened and drew conclusions about American capabilities that operated beyond official oversight. Her phone buzzed with a message from Emma. "Mom, just heard on the news about coordinated strikes against terrorist facilities. Hope you're safe and that your work is making the world better." The innocence in that message cut deeper than any official reprimand could have. Her daughter believed her mother worked to make the world safer, unaware that sometimes making the world safer required decisions that existed in gray areas between authorization and necessity. "Captain Blackwood," the facility's communication officer announced, "we're receiving confirmation from global assets. All targets successfully neutralized. Enemy electronic warfare capabilities against precision targeting systems have been significantly degraded." But even as success confirmations arrived, Raven knew the real consequences were just beginning. Somewhere in official channels, people were asking questions about unauthorized strikes that demonstrated capabilities beyond official inventories. And somewhere else, Foreign intelligence agencies were analyzing American precision warfare capabilities that had just been fully displayed for anyone sophisticated enough to interpret the data. The elevator ride back to desert surface took 3 minutes, but felt like crossing between different realities. Above ground, Nevada looked exactly the same as always, but felt fundamentally different now that Raven understood how much activity existed beneath landscapes that appeared empty. The man who had orchestrated her recruitment handed her a secure phone as they emerged into afternoon sunlight that felt harsh after the facility's controlled environment. "Captain, this connects to resources that don't appear in official directories. Use it when precision matters more than authorization." Who do I report to? People who believe American security interests sometimes require capabilities that operate beyond official oversight. His expression remained neutral, but his eyes carried satisfaction that spoke to successful completion of objectives that had required months of preparation. "Captain, your precision just prevented demonstrations that would have encouraged every regional power to develop countermeasures against American precision warfare." The drive back to Creech Air Force Base took 47 minutes through landscape that looked peaceful and ordinary, but now carried knowledge of capabilities that didn't officially exist. Raven's hands moved through familiar driving routines, while her mind processed decisions that would either be vindicated by global stability or condemned by official investigations. At 16:47 hours, she walked into Colonel Hartford's office, prepared to face consequences that could range from commendation to court-martial, depending on how official channels chose to interpret unauthorized precision strikes that had protected American precision warfare capabilities through methods that couldn't be officially acknowledged. Hartford looked up from displays showing global intelligence assessments of the day's coordinated strikes, his expression cycling between professional admiration and bureaucratic concern. "Captain, someone just demonstrated precision warfare capabilities that exceed anything in our official inventories. Someone who had access to targeting intelligence that should have been impossible to obtain through official channels." "Yes, sir." "Someone whose strikes just neutralized enemy electronic warfare capabilities that were prepared to demonstrate systematic vulnerabilities in American precision targeting systems." "Yes, sir." Hartford studied her with eyes that had seen enough wars to recognize the difference between tactical success and strategic necessity. "Captain, I have reports suggesting you may have had contact with unofficial resources during the period when these strikes were coordinated." The weight of decision balanced on words that would either confirm or deny involvement in operations that existed in gray areas between authorization and necessity. Raven had spent 4 years learning to thread needles from stratospheric altitudes, but this was a different kind of precision, threading truth through bureaucratic consequences without compromising capabilities that might be needed again. "Sir, I believe American precision warfare capabilities are worth protecting, even when official channels become compromised by foreign intelligence penetration." Hartford's expression shifted to something that might have been understanding wrapped around official necessity for plausible deniability. "Captain, official investigations will examine today's events with thoroughness that reflects their strategic importance. But unofficially, someone just prevented demonstrations that could have encouraged global development of countermeasures against precision warfare." Through Hartford's window, Nevada desert stretched toward mountains that held facilities that didn't officially exist, but apparently existed with sufficient reality to coordinate precision strikes across multiple theaters simultaneously. The contradiction was sharp enough to cut, but Raven was beginning to understand that in modern warfare, contradictions often provided more security than consistency. "Sir, what happens now?" "Now, Captain, you return to routine operations while official channels determine whether today's events represent unauthorized action requiring disciplinary measures or necessary measures requiring official acknowledgement." Hartford's voice carried understanding that spoke to experience with situations where official procedures became inadequate for protecting national interests. But Captain, if similar situations arise in the future, official channels may benefit from unofficial capabilities that demonstrate the kind of precision that just prevented global degradation of American military advantages. At 17:21 hours, Captain Raven Blackwood walked out of Colonel Hartford's office with the understanding that she had become part of something that existed between official military structure and unofficial necessity, where precision mattered more than authorization and results mattered more than regulations. Her phone buzzed with a message from the secure device she'd been given. Precision preserved. Well done, Captain. Resources remain available when needed. That night, Raven sat in her Nevada apartment surrounded by her daughter's college acceptance materials and military commendations that represented 4 years of precision warfare in conflicts that were officially acknowledged. But now, she also carried knowledge of capabilities that existed beyond official acknowledgement, resources that operated when precision mattered more than procedure. Emma called at 21:47 hours, with excitement that cut through bureaucratic complications like sunlight through storm clouds. Mom, I've been thinking about my aerospace engineering program, and I want to focus on systems that can't be compromised or manipulated by hostile forces. I want to build satellites and guidance systems that are too precise and too well protected to be turned against the people they're supposed to protect. The irony was sharp enough to make Raven smile despite everything she'd learned about precision being turned against itself. That sounds like exactly the right kind of engineering, Em. Mom, I know you can't talk about your work much, but I hope what you do makes the world safer for people like us. Em, everything I do is about making the world safer for people exactly like you. After ending the call, Raven stood at her window looking toward mountains that held secrets in facilities that didn't officially exist, but existed with sufficient reality to prevent wars through precision strikes that couldn't be officially acknowledged. Tomorrow, she would return to routine operations, threading needles from stratospheric altitudes in officially sanctioned conflicts. But now she also carried knowledge that precision warfare sometimes required precision about more than just targeting, precision about choosing between authorization and necessity, between procedure and protection, between official channels and unofficial capabilities that existed to preserve what official channels couldn't always protect. The secure phone buzzed with a final message. Captain, your precision preserved American military advantages that took decades to develop and could have been lost in hours. Sleep well. You've earned it. Outside her window, the Nevada desert looked peaceful and empty under starlight that painted familiar patterns across sky that had witnessed more than its share of precision strikes launched toward distant targets. But Raven now understood that precision was about more than hitting targets. It was about choosing the right ones, at the right time, for the right reasons, even when those reasons existed beyond official authorization. Her call sign had been earned through precision in impossible circumstances, threading needles from altitudes where most pilots couldn't even find their targets. But today's precision had been different, threading American security interests through bureaucratic complications and foreign intelligence penetration toward outcomes that preserved capabilities for conflicts that might never need to be officially acknowledged. At 22:34 hours, Captain Raven Blackwood went to sleep knowing that her precision had prevented global demonstrations that could have encouraged widespread development of countermeasures against American military capabilities. But more importantly, she went asleep knowing that precision sometimes meant choosing unofficial necessity over official authorization when protecting the people precision was supposed to serve. The morning briefing at Creech Air Force Base carried routine efficiency that made the previous day's events feel almost surreal. Colonel Hartford read intelligence summaries that mentioned coordinated strikes against terrorist electronic warfare installations, without acknowledging American involvement, referred to degradation of enemy capabilities without specifying degradation methods, and discussed improved tactical conditions without explaining improvement mechanisms. Captain Raven Blackwood sat in the briefing room surrounded by colleagues who fought the same wars she fought, but who might never know about capabilities that existed beyond official acknowledgement or precision that operated beyond official authorization. The cognitive dissonance was sharp enough to cut, but she was beginning to understand that successful precision warfare required compartmentalization of information as much as coordination of targeting systems. Major Santos approached her after the briefing with expression that carried professional concern wrapped around personal understanding. Raven, official investigation into yesterday's events has been classified at levels that suggest national security implications. But unofficially, someone prevented situations that could have compromised American precision warfare globally. Any word on disciplinary measures? Officially, the investigation continues. Unofficially, people at levels above our clearance seem satisfied with outcomes that prevented strategic degradation of American military capabilities. Santos paused, choosing words carefully. Raven, whatever happened yesterday, it appears to have prevented problems that would have been much worse than any disciplinary measures. Through the briefing room windows, Nevada desert stretched toward mountains that looked exactly the same as always, but carried knowledge of capabilities that,